Hello everybody, Eternal Flame here. Alright, back to doing the long hellos, let's do this. Today we're here to talk about the Grand General, the strongest of the 10 Shikigami, the legendary Divine General Mahoraga. We're going to talk about how strong he is, everything we know about him, and most of all, near the end of the video, I'm going to give a few theories on how I think it's possible to counter his insane abilities. So, before we get into this video, be sure to subscribe if you like content like this. We have plenty more on the way. And let's get straight into this. Now, some of you guys might just be confused at why I'm even making this video, considering the fact I already had a video that was made to explain Mahoraga's powers. Well, at that current time, we didn't really know much about Mahoraga, and we still don't know much. However, Mahoraga has gained a lot more interest and a lot more of the forefront, on top of the fact that in that original video, I only briefly skimmed over what Mahoraga could do, because I was explaining everything we knew about the 10 Shadows in general. So, I want to do a full-depth analysis on everything we know about Mahoraga, and that's what this video is made to be. For a long time, we didn't actually know what Mahoraga was. Mahoraga was always the backup plan, the treasured summon that Megumi could always rely on in case he wanted to do a neutral death between himself and his opponent, until we actually got to see it in action. However, before we could even see it start to fight, we got to learn a little bit of lore about Mahoraga, where back then, around 300 to 400 years ago, a 6-size Limitless user, as well as a 10 Shadows user were fighting, and it was implied to be somewhat equal between the two of them. However, the 10 Shadows user summoned Mahoraga in order to try and end the fight. However, Mahoraga ended up taking out both the 6-size Limitless user and the 10 Shadows user, already setting a very large precedent of strength, especially because they were from 300 to 400 years ago. And it's very heavily implied that the past people were much more bloodthirsty and much more powerful, even in the 300 400 years ago period, because of one of Megumi's statements to Yuji in the Culling Games. Especially considering this was also the same era Kashimo and Ryu were from, by the way, so have fun with that knowledge. So yeah, Mahoraga, an untamed Mahoraga at that, was already that insanely powerful, considering the fact that we know for a fact Mahoraga has never been tamed once before. And we get to see why Mahoraga has never been tamed, because his first fight in the entire series was against Sukuna. And let's just say Mahoraga delivered in that fight, because considering his performance, it made a lot of sense of why a 10 Shadows user that might have potentially tamed 9 of the Shikigami up to this point, including the Healing Deer, which is already incredibly overpowered, as well as a 6-size Limitless user who might have had access to everything Gojo had, but was just definitely weaker than him, both of them failed to defeat Mahoraga. And some of you guys might be wondering, why am I saying that Mahoraga in his display against Sukuna showed why he was capable of taking both of them? Well, let's get into both his feats and his actual abilities now. So Mahoraga physically is already insanely strong, having a lot of physical feats that are relative to a 15 finger inside of Yuji Itadori's body Sukuna, who should be stronger than the Sukuna we see in Megumi's body, and fighting him relatively evenly, including blitzing him at some points, but not like perception blitzing, just blitzing fast enough where he's faster than him. Like, it's a bit debatable, but it's clear they are on the same level physically wise. Now, at first, like, for a long while, it was debatable whether Mahoraga was, like, above the Yuta tier of character, like the untamed Mahoraga, purely because of the entire statement from Yuji, where Yuji basically told them, if Sukuna ever ends up taking control of me again, Yuta, defeat me. Basically implying that Yuta would be capable of taking out a 15-finger level Sukuna of opponent. However, with what 15-finger Megumi did to Ryu, it's been very heavily debunked by this point, because Ryu has some relativity to Yuta. Whether you think that it's a mid-diff or high-diff relativity, it doesn't really matter. We just know for a fact Ryu and Yuta by this point are definitely relative, and Ryu got one-shot and perception blitzed by Sukuna, which is the same Sukuna, if not a weaker Sukuna. I'm not going to get into whether Megumi Sukuna is physically weaker or Yuji Sukuna is physically weaker. That we can just say they're relative for now. Like, that's its old other debate. It was getting kept up with by Mahoraga. So that Mahoraga would have been blitzing around Yuta by this point, and yeah. It is time for an intermission, because we have a sponsor for today. This video is sponsored by Fandomian. We have a lot of expos on the way happening this summer, and you know where the best place to buy your cosplay that can also fit as casual clothes is? Fandomio, because they have plenty of clothes, high quality clothes at that, on the way. You want to cosplay as Yuji? Well, we got plenty of Yuji outfits. Gojo, you can look like any of the students. You want Gojo sunglasses? Get Gojo sunglasses, etc. The link in the description below, and remember to use our code on screen now in order to get a discount. Anyways, back to the video. And that's like the untamed Mahoraga at that. And it doesn't just have insane physical stats. No. It has other insane abilities. For example, it has the positive cursed energy sword, which is is a sword that basically can overwhelm cursed spirits with positive amounts of energy, to such a point that 15 fingers Sukuna said if he was a cursed spirit still, he would have died to that. And there are plenty of ways you can actually take that. For example, you could take that as Sukuna saying, this could have killed him at 20 fingers of Sukuna power, or it would just kill him at 15 fingers of Sukuna power if he was a cursed spirit. Either way, it is completely insane. But that's not what you all came here for. No, you all know the power you really wanted to hear talk about. The Dharma Chakra wheel that he has access to. And that wheel is by far one of the most broken powers I have seen in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, purely because of what it allows Mahoraga to do. Anytime Mahoraga gets hit by an attack, the wheel is able to spin. After it's finished spinning, Mahoraga has now adapted to the attack. While it doesn't grant him immunity to the attack, it does grant him an insanely amped amount of durability towards the attack, making it no longer a one-shot to him. For example, he was able to adapt to Sukuna's cleave after he got hit by it once. However, also, an important thing to know about it is, it's not techniques that it adapts to, it is concepts. For example, because Sukuna uses a slashing type of attack, now he is adapted to slicing types of attacks in general, rather than just cleave and dismantle. So if Sukuna used cleave and dismantle on it, and you were to attack it with a sword slash, the sword slash would do much less damage to it, because it's already adapted to slicing types of attacks. Now this should be noted, while it doesn't make him completely immune to the attacks, Mahoraga already gets such an insane durability total, and then he gets this insane durability amp on top of all that, that he basically might as well be immune. Because, for example, after he took one of Sukuna's cleave attacks, he was able to see the cleave attacks, deflect them, and tank the entire Malevolent Shrine's worth of cleave and dismantle attacks, which are 120% amped due to how domains worked, and he was still able to live through that. Like, yeah, he took a lot of damage, but he was still healing from that. Oh, and by the way, Mahoraga can also heal. Oh, and the more important thing about Mahoraga that makes him even more insane, domains do not bypass this technique, because from what we can tell about the technique, it literally changes Mahoraga's physical body. Because the way domains work is they usually bypass cursed energy defenses that are based on cursed techniques. They don't bypass cursed energy defenses as a whole. For example, cursed energy reinforcement is still useful, but that's how they're able to hit Gojo, because they bypass cursed technique defenses. However, from what we can tell, Mahoraga's wheel alters its physical body itself, making it so Mahoraga's body is immune to attacks, allowing him to bypass the normal thing that domains allow you to do of bypassing curse technique durability, because the wheel only makes Mahoraga's actual durability stronger. It doesn't amp it. Well, it does amp it, but it's more like a permanent add-on to the body itself. There's also something else the wheel allows him to do. It doesn't just allow him to adapt to techniques and make him more durable to it. It also swaps his fighting style, which is something I even forgot about, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I was talking with Corkless, and Corkless just reminded me of this recording. I was like, oh, this is good timing. That was just a pure, raw, untamed Mahoraga that was summoned by Megumi and what it could do. Now let's talk about what the Mahoraga summoned by Sukuna can do. Because Mahoraga summoned by Sukuna, both 15 Fingers and the current Mahoraga, is absolutely insane, especially because of an ability it now has access to through Sukuna. Now, it should be noted that the 10 shadows all get amplified by the user's cursed energy, which is why they get stronger and stronger with time, because the user of them is also getting stronger and able to put more cursed energy into them. Now you have Sukuna, who has twice the amount of cursed energy as Yuta, putting all of that cursed energy, not fully, but putting that in to amplify Mahoraga and its already insane amounts of strength. It's absolutely ridiculous. It was able to shatter Yorozu's perfect sphere, something that's supposed to have an infinite amount of pressure and friction upon touching it, and he already adapted to it. But that's not the main ability that makes it so extremely overpowered. No. The main ability that makes it so extremely overpowered to me is the fact the wheel can be summoned separately, and it can be given to the wielder instead, where if the wielder gets hit by an attack, it allows Mahoraga and debatably the wielder to adapt to any attack it gets hit by, making it do much less damage as a result of that. And more importantly, the wheel can be hidden inside of the shadow. Now, do you know why this is so extremely powerful? Because you can have the wheel out the entire fight, adapting to techniques, and no one will know because no one has a way to check that it's inside of your shadow. Like, it's absolutely insanely broken, and that's what Sukuna figured out to do with it, and how he managed to get Mahoraga to adapt to all of the attacks recently. more than likely he's been having it out since the very start, and that's why he's allowed himself to get hit by every single attack. At least that's my prediction, but we know for a fact it's at least adapted to Unlimited Void and Infinity by this point. While if it adapted to Red, Blue, and Purple is a bit more in the air, we know for a fact that that is what it has adapted to by this point. And that already makes it insanely powerful, because the fact that it can even be hidden to begin with makes it so much more broken. A tamed Mahoraga is so much more scarier than an untamed Mahoraga that it's kind of ridiculous. Especially because it can already just shrug off the effects of Unlimited Void too, thanks to its adaptation ability, which is super insane. Mahoraga is looking to be extremely unbeatable by this point, purely because of how much it's already adapted to, how insane its physical stats are, etc. All of that. It's just looking very, very bad for Gojo. But are there ways that Gojo or potentially other people can potentially stop Mahoraga? And that is where my theory comes to right now. But before that, I do want to say where I put Mahoraga in the verse. Right now, I put Mahoraga at number 3. Now, Untamed Mahoraga is debatably 3 or 4. Like, I am on the fence on whether I put him above Kenjaku or below Kenjaku. Currently, I'm leaning closer to above Kenjaku, but that's just my opinion. Like, that's for another day. It's just Mahoraga currently scales to a stronger 15-finger Sukuna in terms of physicality, while a weaker one was able to blitz someone Yuta can scale to, and everyone kind of just makes a scaling chain off Yuta in terms of the top 10 strongest at this point. Other than, like, maybe Maki and Toji. Even then, they do not scale up to this Mahoraga level of person yet. But a tamed Mahoraga that's owned by Sukuna, that's easily number 3. Whether you think it's 15 finger or 20 finger, it doesn't matter. They're just amped by Sukuna to that insane of an extent. However, are there potential ways that it can be countered up to this point? Yes, I do think there are ways for it to be countered, and now I'm going to get into those theories that I have. Now, this is my main theory on how I think it can be countered, and it's really obvious and directly in front of us. Stop the wheel from turning. Because it is very heavily implied, or at least it is shown directly to us, the wheel needs to turn in order for Mahoraga to adapt to something. If you are able to physically hold the wheel and stop it from turning, in theory it shouldn't be able to adapt. As a result of that, it can no longer adapt to things if its wheel is stopped. Now, that is much easier said than done, especially if you have to deal with fighting Sukuna and Mahoraga directly and you have to get the wheel away. But that is a good way to potentially counter it, because it stops the condition that allows Mahoraga to even adapt to begin with, if the wheel turning is at all necessary. But I do think it is very much necessary, considering every time there has been such an importance on the wheel actually turning for Mahoraga to adapt. Now, the second way, in theory, is to potentially overwhelm it with a positive amount of curse energy, purely because it's still a Shikigami, it's still a cursed spirit at the end of the day. That might work, but I also don't think that will work due to the fact it literally has a positive energy, cursed energy sword, so it might already be adapted to positive cursed energy. However, that might theoretically be a way to do it. So if you can get Yuta in there to smack him on the lips and just pull what he did to Kurorushi, then yeah. Another way is destroying the wheel, but I doubt that will be capable to do by anyone, considering Untamed Mahoraga's wheel didn't get destroyed by Sukuna's huge Fire Blast arrow nuke that he fired off towards Mahoraga. So if that's not destroying an Untamed Mahoraga's wheel, no one's destroying that wheel. And finally, this is the other limit I've seen a lot of people come to due to its name, having the number 8 in it, that it's limited to adapting to 8 concepts in total. And that is like an interesting theory. I'm not fully sold on it, but it might be the way that it can actually be countered, that it's limited to 8. Because I'll be honest with you guys, I don't see Mahoraga defeating Gojo. Like, there's no way Mahoraga is going to be the one to put down Gojo. However, he might. However, I do wanted to note just how powerful Mahoraga is, that we're put into such a position that it's very hard to figure out a way that Gojo might be able to stop this Sukuna-amped Mahoraga. Put respect on this beast's name, at how strong it actually is. Whether tamed or untamed, it deserves the respect. Those are my beliefs on how strong Mahoraga is, my theories on where I think Mahoraga will be, and how to take out Mahoraga. But I'm curious to see what you guys think in the comment section down below. I'll see y'all later. Peace.